He was just George Moscone enjoying every aspect of life. And he really, absolutely had a love affair with San Francisco.
My dad grew up on Octavia Street in the Marina in an apartment with his mother, Lena, my nanny Lee.
You know, my mother raised me all her life because my father and she were separated, and her inability to be able to get a decent wage for her efforts and her talents, and our inability to stay in a home or a rental property because of the fear of a woman who was the breadwinner and a young boy who might have been a scallywag is not just a modern problem, it's a problem that we experienced.
Cappy was a year behind George. They played ball together and were friends from, I don't know when they met in SI.
He won the freshman elocution contest at SI. That same era, his senior year, George played varsity. I was on that team, and we won the championship. We both made All-City.
There was a reporter for the Call Bulletin named Del Sumi. She would refer to him as the raven-haired boy.
George and Gina knew one another from St. Bridget's Grammar School. And Gina lived off Union Street on Gough, and George lived on Octavia. Gina Bondanza grew up, and she was a knockout, and I think he noticed.
What started for us, the relationship that has lasted a lifetime. And that all began at Hastings College of Law on McAllister. George was a handsome dude, debonair, fiery in every way. George was unyielding in his demand for equal treatment of people. George Moscone went to Mississippi as a lawyer back in 1963 or 64, along with a delegation of San Francisco lawyers.
These were people who believed, as lawyers, they had an obligation to the cause of justice.
In '66, George got elected to the Senate.
The majority leader on the Democratic side was the power. George Moscone was tapped to take the job.
Then he ran for mayor, which every native son's dreams to run for mayor.
We won that campaign. Phil Burton and all of what Phil Burton could bring to the table went in George Moscone's direction. Moscone was the change agent, as we now know you can be, and Barack Obama has so handsomely proved it. You really had an active racial minority constituency going out to vote for Moscone. You had an environmental movement going out to vote for George Moscone. You had the elderly all for George Moscone. Whatever the progressive movement, if it existed at that time, was for George Moscone. Moscone's campaign was basically a dream grassroots campaign.
He had a couple kids that were about to graduate high school, so we were growing up. He loved us tremendously, and he loved the city tremendously. San Francisco, he was a true city boy. And so I think to him, coming home to be the mayor of San Francisco was really like a crowning achievement.
I find only elation. You know, I'm going to be the 37th mayor of the greatest city in the world.
My dad loved San Francisco, every inch of it. Being mayor was the greatest job he could ever have because then he could make the city celebrate itself. He opened the doors to women, African Americans, Asians, Latinos, homosexuals, lesbians, the whole gamut. He was a genuinely fearless man. If he saw something and he saw it was wrong, he'd step towards it and deal with it. That was sort of how he ran his life.
He just loved what he was doing. He was somebody who was very accessible and approachable. He felt so lucky to be mayor in a city as diverse as San Francisco. My dad believed that everyone should be part of public service. All voices needed to be heard. The solutions are created in the moment, and the best solutions are when everyone has a chance to say their piece.
I was so proud of my father, and he was so passionate that you wanted to be a part of the passion. My dad used to say, you have a voice, use it. He said it to us, and he said it to other people, and that's how he lived his life.
The Moscone Convention Center, the Yerba Buena Center as it was called in those days, is probably the best example of all
of what you can accomplish through the politics and government of inclusion. I think it was one of George's proudest moments that he was able to accomplish that, and it was because of his belief and his ability to include people and have them work together for the betterment of their community.
He dreamed in a substantial way, I think, and has something to show for it. He smiled, and in that smile you felt that for the first time in your life, you were understood as you never had been and always wanted to be.
He was my best friend. He was special, smoked too much, but what the hell.